Hi, this is Mike Edelhart, and I'm here with another edition of Inception, our podcast, and now kind of a video cast about beginnings of new companies, new ideas in science, a little look at the future, and today we're actually going to talk about our own beginnings a little bit. So I'm here with Jun Deng, fresh back from maternity leave, our lead bio partner, and actually this is our 4th anniversary of doing the podcast, so we thought we'd talk about our own history a little bit. You were the first team member at Joyance.
Yep, it's such a pleasure to come back. I'm super excited to start working on investment again. Yeah, it's just very exciting. I think it's the 1st anniversary for the podcast, but my 5th year here at Joyance. I was the first one joined Joyance. It's a quite incredible journey. I really feeling blessed about joining this journey.
Well, it's been great to have you here. So what are your early memories of being here? I mean, I have mine, but mine are probably sort of fuzzier than yours. You're younger than me. So what's your origin story for how we found one another?
Sure. I am a scientist turned investor. So I basically started as investing more of the traditional life science companies like diagnostic and medical devices. But then I was watching that the digital transformation is coming to healthcare. So I really want to test my hypothesis of investing into digital health. At the beginning, I was introduced to the founding partner, Bill Losey, and Bill introduced me to you. I feel quite incredible that I was given the opportunity to invest into the area that I'm really passionate about. One of that is digital healthcare and healthcare transformation. That's how I joined. And I think what's really attracted me joining the company, number one is the thesis. We invest in delightful moments. That's very unique. I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what does that mean. And 2 is the culture. We have incredible culture. These 2, I think, are the most attractive factors for me to join the fund.
Got it. Well, of course, you're part of having created that culture. We can maybe talk about that more in a minute. My memory of it is that when we started Joyance and we began saying to folks, we're going to have a fund about how science can deliver delight and about delightful moments, we were getting a lot of eye roll from all kinds of folks, from entrepreneurs, from other investors who are basically like, that's nice. The old guys are being weird. And we wanted folks with science backgrounds on the team, but many of the folks we talked to had no interest in what we were doing because we weren't a traditional bio fund and we weren't approaching it in the same way, and we were talking about things very differently, and you quite uniquely seemed to get it and seemed excited by it, which I recall being sort of flabbergasted by. It's like, yes, finally somebody who gets it, and really gratified by, because what you'd done before, as you talked about, had been pretty traditional.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly true. I think I appreciate that comments. I think I come from like a combination of seeing the tech investment as well as life science investment, and at that time I think digital transformation is transforming a lot of areas: consumer, media, logistics. Healthcare is representing 25% of the U.S. economy. It's due for a transformation. I remember I was interviewed a couple of years ago, and people were asking me whether digital health is a bubble or not. And then now everyone's adopting it. So this is one example, and we are investing in a lot of other forefront technologies, such as cellular-based food, robotics, neuroscience, microbiome. Back then, like, it's just emerging, and now every single element of this are being accepted by not only the investment community, but also the overall ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly seems to have changed over these last few years. We don't get the eye roll now.
No.
In fact, we get a lot of folks over there, whole institutes. In fact, I think there's one at your alma mater that's looking at aspects of this and looking at the biological impact of systemic gratitude and the sense that happiness affects health and health affects happiness, which we didn't get a lot of instant agreement on 5 years ago. Folks are nodding before we're saying it now, and maybe we've been part of that, but it's also, I think, been COVID and a whole range of things that have caused folks to wake up to the fact that this is true, and we're just trying to react to it.
Yeah, COVID, despite how bad it is, definitely led the healthcare ecosystem seeing that innovation is necessary, and then we need faster, more scalable, more consumer-centric solutions, and that's happening over the past few years.
Yeah, it accelerated a lot of our portfolio. We can't claim to have had a lot to do with that, except that we were in health, and we were aware pandemics could happen, but COVID basically grabbed chunks of the future and pulled them forward.
Absolutely.
I don't know, 5 years, 10 years. And I don't think those changes will go back to where they were before.
I totally agree on that. I think internet was kind of thing 20 years ago, and then digital health, but in the future, probably it's just going to be the norm.
Yeah, it certainly feels like it. You know, one of the things that thinking back to when we got Joyance going, I think was how little we knew about what we were doing. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we were completely stumbling in the dark, but it wasn't far from that. I mean, we had this notion of delightful moments, but we really had no idea back then what delightful moments meant. I remember a lot of conversations about, so, you know, are we focusing on emotion detection or emotion creation or emotional alteration or something else? And we really were just kind of looking everywhere at once, trying to get a sense of what it was we were really looking for. Is that how you recall it?
Oh, definitely. I found the thesis very attractive. I think a lot of talented people joining our team has found that as well, and entrepreneurs find a lot of synergies with the delightful moment thesis. And I remember that we had a lot of discussions regarding what really consists of delightful moments, what delight means, what moments means. Are we investing in wellness, happiness? Are we investing in more of the health? Yeah, that's actually like a curious for me, like how is that something that you come out, Bill come out, or is this a combination of discussions within the beginning founders?
It's a great question. Well, we both Bill and I, and of course Bill Losi, the founder here, is retired now, but he was very much involved when we got this all started. He and I both come from the same background at Ziff Davis, where we were kind of drilled on dialectic. In other words, don't fall in love with your own thinking, always ask questions, always look out at the world and try and understand what's happening there by asking questions and being open to actually listening to the answers. And that's what we tried to do here in the beginning. It was just that. We're about delightful moments. What's delight? Is delight the same as happiness, or is it a component of happiness, or is it entirely different than happiness? And what's the definition of a moment? And started developing those ideas that I think we use day in, day out now, that delight does exist in time, and it's that you're going from 0 to 1. So 0 is humdrum, same old thing every day, and 1 is a little different, a little exalted in one way or another, and it goes on for a little while, and then you go back. And now we have all these ideas about enablers, that it's not just skiing is a ordinary activity. skiing on a glorious morning with perfect snow and the snow is pluming around you and you feel the presence of God. That's not. And that's kind of the difference between a moment and a delightful moment, that sense of uplift, whether it comes from, doing something with your mind or doing something with your microbiome or doing something with your surroundings or whatever. And we didn't have any of those ideas when we started. And neither did the entrepreneurs. We now have entrepreneurs who reach out to us going, I have a delightful moments company and I want to tell you about it. And that wasn't the case 5 years ago for any of us.
Yeah, absolutely. We are the top search if anybody's search of joyful or delightful experience. And I think also we had a wider definitions of the sectors we want to invest in. And I remember like we started this investing in neuroscience. We investing in genomics, microbiome, certain pleasure-causing consumer products. Now we're also looking at sustainability. We're also looking at space, like how the environment you are in are influencing the delightful, the health status for a human being, and fitness and mental health for sure. That's a big part for us as well.
Right. Yeah, and I think all those come from, relooking at the fundamentals every year with the notion that we're pretty strong on here. What do we know? What don't we know? What's happening? And we've seen attitudes among people change. So the focus on inner space, I want to make sure I'm in tune, proximate space, spending all this time during COVID in my house with the ones I love. I'm realizing things about those interactions and where I'm at that matter to me in a way they didn't before, and also public space, that the notion of walking out your front door as a neutral experience is not the case now. It's a considered experience. Am I going to be okay? Do I have to put a mask on? Are other people putting masks on? Is it weird out there? And those changes in attitudes, entrepreneurs are human beings too. They reflect those changes and science responds to them. And yeah, I think the whole sense that you can't have much delight if you don't have access to food, if you don't have access to water, if the air is unbreathable, if the planet becomes untenable, then we're going to go down the Maslow scale. And our whole purpose as a fund is to think about ways to bring folks up the Maslow scale a little bit. And so we have to focus at that macro level too.
That's very philosophical discussion about how we set the thesis.
Yeah, and we've talked, one of the things that's interesting is sometimes we see these things through research. We're looking at attitudes or law changes, but the entrepreneurs don't get it yet. So there are sometimes years, water was a pretty good example where we've been talking about pure water in the palm of my hands is something people are really interested in having for 2 years now. And we're just now beginning to see, in fact, 3 companies in the last 6 weeks with different approaches to delivering that. And before that, the entrepreneurs weren't acting on the idea, and now they are. So now we may actually get some chances to invest in this space, having desired to invest in this space for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. I think food as well. I think 5 years ago when I joined the field, it's just a handful of cellular-based meat companies. But now, like the infrastructure is more and more mature. We have, 2 hands of, I think, not one hand of companies in the area, and they're doing really well.
Yeah, they are. And, it's one of those areas where I actually think we started investing before we understood all the fundamentals. In other words, we recognize that science is making possible things that weren't possible before. People seem open to the idea of recognizing you need protein and all that, but not wanting to have hurt animals, not wanting to have harmed the planet, et cetera, having more control. But I think the core notion that the food supply needs to be decoupled from land, and the fish supply needs to be decoupled from the ocean because of global warming and global instability and a whole host of things. I think that really emerged about halfway through our investing in the category that, why this really matters is we're going to run out of food. Started looking at migration to some of the growing areas and stuff. And, even now, the story this week, right? One of the big dams out here in the Western US has gone down to a point so low that a body that had been sunk in the reservoir decades ago was found. And so water is going to become a real issue as the environment shifts, we think, and we desire to find a way to help folks respond to that, as opposed to just being victims of the change.
That's exactly true. I think this is my blessing to be able to join this team and supporting entrepreneurs with big missions. But I also see in this pattern that it's not. I feel like we're repeating our history here. That we identify a sector that few people are looking at, or few people are doing at it, and we started paying attention to those sectors. And after a couple of years, they're like, companies start emerging, and after a couple of years, there's an explosion of how much of attention is in those sectors.
Yeah, exactly. We talk a lot inside the fund that getting the sectors right is a big part of what we do. So if we pick up next generation food early and see that the science is ready and the people want this, and start getting to understand it, and that happens, then as a fund, we're going to do very, very well, because the early indications we picked up on turn out to be true. And again, if one is replacing the entire worldwide food system, that's an enormous amount of value. And so some of our companies will do great, some of our companies will do less great, but the whole category is doing great. So everything rises with it. And that's something we try to do. And we've gotten it right a few times. Funds are still young, but it looks promising, and hopefully we can keep on doing that.
Absolutely. I think that may be a segue to talk about where our approach is a data-driven approach. Do you think like the reason that we identify the sectors at a very early beginning, is that because our human power or data power or a combination of that?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, it's for sure a combination. It's not possible it's possible for software, if it's got access to appropriate data, to do things like, say, category A, if these are the factors, is stronger than category B. It can do that for sure, but what software can't do is say, this group of human beings has a greater potential for success than that group of human beings. It's too human. And there's too much going on, and it's too right brain a process, filling in all these gaps and things like that. So I think we get a lot of benefit from all the data our system can find in understanding categories and what's happening in terms of dollars and entrepreneurial effort and science and law and everything in these areas. But when it comes down to, the software is there just to help the human team be more effective and more efficient. And I think if, at the heart of it, I agree. I think we have a great team. I love working with our team. They're wonderful people.
Absolutely.
But every single one of us is flawed. And every single one of us is flawed in ways we recognize and in ways we don't recognize. So I think one of the big things for us is a recognition as a group that that's true. And so we're trying as a group to back each other up, and trying as a group to make decisions that we all can support and that are driven by the truth, what's going on out in the world, and not just because June likes it or Mike likes it or I think the entrepreneur is cool, but on things that are more fundamental than that.
Yeah, I think you touched upon two very important cultures of our funds. I think that's attracted me and attracted a lot of people joining our fund. One is, as you mentioned, we always seek to choose, and how, like as you said, like however startled that is, we always seek to choose and try to make the decision based on the chosen data. And the other is, as you always say to us, a group of human beings who love each other and loves what they're doing, gonna accomplish everything. I think that's true for any organizations, especially for the young teams, like our team, like at the startups we're investing. I think that's incredible culture for this fund.
Yeah, I think so too. And well, this is one of my core beliefs, and it's been present all through my career. But I really do believe in it. Especially doing what we do. We're remote. I mean, you and I are relatively close to one another. We're both in the Bay Area, but we're team members, in Asia, Europe, all over the place, and we didn't see each other for 2 years, and now we're starting to see each other again. But even in normal times, we're not together every day. And if we can share that sense of we're actually all trying to figure out what's true or get as close to the truth as we can, that sort of keeps us together as a group, keeps us cohesive and supportive as a group, means that our conversations with one another actually mean something to each of us. And we have to treat each other with respect, because I can't make these decisions on my own, neither can you. So we can only do it together. And I think it's done very good things for us. And we also think it's fundamental to the startups that they only think it's going to be fun to start a company. And then when they get into it, they realize how horrible an experience it is. And only groups that are crazy about what they're doing and really feel strongly positively about one another can survive a crucible like that. And we think it's very important to keep that in mind when we're looking at the companies and evaluating the teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think resilience is number one important thing for entrepreneurs we're selecting and the passionate. I completely agree with that. I think another discussion we had a lot from the beginning, even to now, is what stage we want to invest. We select the inception stage, which traditionally believed as the death study for traditional ventures, because the failure rate is so high. Well, did you have that conversation with the founding teams? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it was when we started this. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. Bill had an active, successful career as an angel investor and all that. And we knew what the fundamentals were. We knew why. I mean, I've been in several funds. You go into the A or just before the A because it's a lot of data. Then you can see how the company's done, how the team has performed. You can write a bigger check. You're halfway through the company's development process. So if it takes 10 years for them to exit from the A, it takes 5. And you get a better IRR. So there's all kinds of reasons to do that. That's why so many funds do it. The problem is so many funds do it. A couple of old techies with small fund were hardly likely to be able to muscle their way into all those deals. And I did some work early in my career with folks who were experts in Graham Wall Street investing. And Graham Wall Street investing says if everybody's going to the right, your opportunity can't be to the right. That opportunity's already been taken by others. So you have to look somewhere else. So we look somewhere else. And the prejudice when we started the funds, it's less prevalent a prejudice now, was you just can't go early. It's impossible. You can't find the companies. If you can find them, you can't know anything about them because they haven't done anything yet. And even if you can figure that out, you can't write a big enough check to make any difference. And so we went in with some bright kids from Zip Brothers and our early team, and we just took that set of mythologies apart and looked at each aspect of it and said, is that really true? Is that really true in the world right now? And we came to the conclusion that with all the data around today, it wasn't necessarily true, that we could create a bloom of information by identifying certain segments and focusing on those and packing a lot of information into those segments with people and software and having a team that was open to looking at it all and looking for patterns that we could pick up very early, a sense that in this frame, that company's stronger than that company. And so if the frame's going to rise, we should put money in that company and expect something good to happen. And it turned out we were right, that is doable, and we could do it. And we did it in the US, and then we demonstrated we could do it in Europe, and we did it in several different categories. And then we demonstrated we could do it related to health. And so I think it's been very satisfying to see. Now other funds are starting to recognize the same thing. And so our obligation as a team is to continue to rethink this and innovate and try and come up with better ways to do what we're doing, and never to sit back on our laurels and get all smug about, look how cool we are. But to wake up every morning thinking about, there's got to be a better way to do this, and why not us to be the ones that think of it.
Yep, we're innovating as our startups are innovating.
Yeah,
that's incredibly helpful for the investment team as well. Is we used to like mostly get the deal from referrals, as
right.
This is very network driven career, but I think we disrupted that a bit by using systematic approach and data driven approach. That's super helpful.
Yeah, it's hugely helpful, and I think it's been proven that way, and it's hugely helpful even if the companies being found by our machine learning system don't turn out to be the companies we invest in. That's one of the big things, that it may well be that our superstar CEO is the source of another superstar CEO, because they sort of seek one another out. But how can we know that that next company has the right stuff? And only if we're aware of all the available options and trends, and what areas of science are being exploited, and where are the teams, and how are these products going to get to market, and what are people looking for. Only if we look at all of that can we see enough of the surrounding landscape to be able to say, well, this company has a strong enough set of indications of success that we should act on it. And so we talk about that a lot at the fund too, celebrating the no's as much as the yeses, and celebrating all the work that goes into evaluating a company. We don't do anything on that work. Changes you know things you didn't know. It changes the team. The team is aware of things that it might not be aware of otherwise, and gives us a context that allows us to make more confident decisions.
Yep, that's totally true. I think not only we are maturing as known investors in joyful experience, delightful moments, but also our investment strategy has been evolving over the years as well. We normally, like, I remember at the beginning, we write like 50, 100K checks, and now we have more dry power. We have decided we have an opportunity fund that we invest in more strategically afterwards, after the initial investments. Where do you see we're going in the future? Do you see we're becoming more, we're going to take more board seats, we're going to invest in more heavily into a certain company, or do you think we're going to adopt our traditional approach?
It always seems to change, and it changes with the team. So the short answer is, it isn't up to me, it's up to the team. And as you know, you came back from maternity leave, and there were probably half a dozen people in partner meeting yesterday who weren't there when you went on maternity leave.
Yeah.
So bigger team, younger team. We brought in a number of young people from Stanford and Columbia and stuff, and a new senior investment partner starts next week in London. So as that team evolves, the point of view will evolve. What seems to be true over these last few months is that the team is starting to believe that we as a group really can recognize what a great company looks like early on. And 5 years ago when we started, we kind of sort of could. So we felt like we've got the category right, and we have to put small checks into a bunch of companies and get to know them before we can really get a sense of which companies are going to stand out from the rest. So small checks, and then try and get a somewhat bigger check in before the A. And now what team members are starting to say is, we actually know. We know. We can see it. Everybody reacts to it. Everybody stands up and applauds at the same moment. And if it's true, we know, shouldn't we get a big check into that company at the beginning? Shouldn't we be more involved with the great companies? Shouldn't we be pouring more of our money into the companies that are going to win. So, we wrote our first $1 million check, bigger than $1 million check last week.
Mhm.
And our funds still aren't all that big. They're a lot bigger than they were when Bill and I started, and even when you got here.
Yep.
But that seems to be the direction we're going. But the judgment of the team. This fund belongs to you guys, and each year it belongs to the young team a little bit more. You'll be the ones that determine that, but that certainly seems to be in the wind right now. Be pickier, commit more to the companies we all really strong about, and try and be a fundamental part of the early stage of those companies.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike, for your trust. I think one thing I've seen myself change is I definitely become more confident in terms of making investment bets. I remember I was brought on the team as a scientist and analyst, giving a lot of technical opinions and analysis. And you give me the opportunity to make independent decisions. And I learned my lessons, learned my lessons from some failures. And some successful cases. Last year, just really lucky to have seen 3 companies I led or involved had a successful M&A. As the feedback loop is so long for venture capitalists, especially with folks on early stage, I think this opportunity to be able to make independent decisions for investments is incredible. So what's your expectation for us and for the fund going forward?
Well, we'll find out. So, of course, Joyance has one big LP. So in the end, will serve the goals of our LP. Funds always serve the goals of their LPs, and we're part of helping a great big company essentially think through its potential futures. So I think we'll be on the Joyance side, part of that for sure, and whatever that means. And I think that's going to be a very interesting process. Companies are being compelled to change by the change in people and circumstances and markets and all of that. And we have an opportunity by getting involved with companies in these areas early to be part of that. And I think beyond that, there's a chance for this group to essentially invent its own future. What are our social starts funds going to be? What are our multi-LP funds going to be? How radically do we want to innovate in venture? And I've got some ideas about that, but I know other team members do as well. And I think it's really going to be up to the team. We did a fundraise during COVID. That was about as much fun as a root canal. And so is the team up for fundraising? This is going to be a very strange year. Lots of bizarre economic signals and retrograde stuff going on out there. So there's going to be a lot of conversation about just how much we want to progress, and right now, how much we want to stay home, focus on doing what we're doing right now, and leave future developments for the fund to the future. But I think data-driven early stage investing is the wave of the future, and we're out on the front of that wave. And I think we have an opportunity and almost an obligation to make the most of that we can. What do you think?
I think I completely agree with you. I think investing into the areas that's more impactful for human beings, not just the healthcare, but also like a lot of things you just touch upon, like water, food, energy, and generating more impact and supporting more impactful entrepreneurs is going to be, it is, and it's going to be the mission of this fund, and more automations. And we are supporting innovative founders, and we ourselves are very innovative in the tools, in the data-driven approach. I think that's only going to make our team make better decisions and access to founders that traditionally hard to access, and more automations. I think that's definitely incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And I want us to work a little harder on innovating on exits and stuff too. We've gotten pretty good at finding companies. pretty good, I think, at getting investment into good companies early. And now if we can help more on the other side of things, how companies do produce value, how they can access the market. We already had one SPAC, but SPACs are just the beginning. Tokenizations and things like this may turn out to be very interesting for our companies, and something we have to understand, experiment with, and figure out what is its rightful place in our toolkit.
Yep.
You know, we could go on and on for hours, but I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking, you know, this could wind up being the longest one of these we've ever done. So it's probably a good idea just to go ahead and wrap it up, at least for now. So here's to the next 5 years. June, let's do it again on the 9-year anniversary, 10-year anniversary of these podcasts, and we'll see what things look like then.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that. Thank you, Mike.
Me too. Thank you. Thanks for having the courage to join us at the beginning when none of us knew what was going on.
It's an amazing journey. Thank you for coaching me. I really appreciate it.
Good teachers are made by great students, so it's easy. Happy to do it. Thanks, June.
Thank you, Mike.